Well, good afternoon, everyone. You haven't seen us in a little while live. You've seen some of our wonderful encore programs. We hope you enjoyed that. This is Linda Dorman, and I'm here with my co host, Dr. Donna Christensen. It's the Health, Wellness, and Lifestyle program here on OurTV.network. For those of you who are viewing through Amazon Fire Stick or Roku or Android or Tempo Television, and of course, we broadcast out of the U.S. Virgin Islands on WSTX Bloomberg Radio. So there's multiple ways to hear us and see us and get this amazing information. First of all, Donna, how are you? I haven't seen
I'm
you.
great. I'm great. Very busy, but fine. Keeps me keeps the blood circulating.
It keeps the blood circulating. Well, that is what we want. We want to keep your blood circulating because you're doing
Yeah.
phenomenal work out in the
Trying to
community.
get ready to do something about my knees though, but I'm good.
Well, it comes a time. We all have to go
Mhm,
through that at some
mhm,
point in time. This is
mhm,
knee
mhm.
replacements for a number of my friends, and
How are
really,
you?
I'm doing very well. Equally as busy, really dodging this COVID bullet. We keep hearing that COVID thing is really
Yeah.
back up. Hospital stays, a number of
Mhm.
death cases. So we just want to encourage all of our listeners and viewers. Be ever so mindful that we're heading into what would normally be infectious disease season, flu,
Mhm.
pneumonia, and now we have COVID right alongside of that, and it mutates as you know. Get to know, wear your mask, and continue to wash your hands and take the precautions that we have been sharing over the last couple of years on this program to be wise. So, with that said, let's introduce our guest for today.
Yes, we're very fortunate to have her with us today.
Absolutely, because we get to talk about all kind of interesting subjects around health, wellness, and lifestyle, and what we're going to talk about certainly fits within that. But first, I want to introduce uh, Arlene Joel, who's the founder and CEO of Community Advocates for Family and Youth,
Mhm.
here headquartered in Prince George's County, Maryland. Great state of Maryland. That happens to be my home area, and we affectionately know the organization as CAFE. Welcome, Arlene. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes.
Wonderful. Did I pronounce your last name correctly? We just want to make sure that we do that correctly.
Yes, it's
Okay,
Joel.
fantastic. Well, let's just hop right into it because we always discover that the hour goes by very, very quickly. We've got some great messages in between our segments.
Mhm.
First of all, can you share a little bit about CAFE? Tell the audience who you are. Why did you, decide to found this amazing community-based organization and the kind of partners that you have developed over the many years?
Yeah, that's a good place to start.
Okay. Well, CAFE is a human services organization. Our platform is Victim Services and Trauma. And so we're working with anyone who's a victim of crime or some traumatic incident. Um, and it's interesting because really my personal burden has always been children. And I really started this out focused on trying to help children who had to testify in court. And so that was, the service I was planning. But then quickly realized that a lot happens before people get to tell their story in court. And
Mhm.
so our services part kind of blossomed from there. I'm proud to say that we're going to be 20 years old in November.
Wow.
And so it's really, thank you. It's really been a journey, but a really heartfelt one to help people who are, impacted or harmed in some way. Not only do we do intense case management, but we offer mental health services, legal services. We recently included like the prevention model because we were always in the aftermath portion of it. And so now we're really recently collaborating with the local schools to do education around intimate partner, healthy relationships, all those kind of things. I think the one thing that makes us unique, and I do have to say that, is that we are the victim service provider for our county police department, which is
Mm,
which is an awesome position to be in because you are right there after they kind of leave the scene, so to speak. And so we're grateful for that position.
well, that's really
That's great.
outstanding.
I wish we had you down here.
Unfortunately, we're needed everywhere, right?
Yes, yes, I'm sure.
And that's a good segue into the broader understanding around the impact of violence on victims. I love the fact that your work stemmed from getting the training and supporting youth who have to come into the court system, and has quickly evolved to be very comprehensive. On that front end, and because this kind of service is needed everywhere, can you talk to us a little bit about that type of preventive work? What does that actually look like, and how would I, as a mom of teens concerned about what's happening in the schools, Donna in her work as a former family health physician and
I'm working in a community right now,
and
so
working
that has
deeply in the community, yes, in leadership roles. What does that look like for us?
Well, it's interesting because we always come from the premise there can be no bystanders if we're going to eliminate domestic violence, intimate partner, in our lifetime. That everyone has to be involved and step up to report, engage, or support someone who may be going through it. No longer can you kind of have the opinion like, oh my gosh, that's happening to her. You have to really be ready to not only embrace it, but to really offer to help. The statistics are true worldwide that 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men are in some way physically, sexually abused, in a relationship. And so while the effort can be done individually and locally, it's a national issue. And so, yeah, everyone can step in and do it. And it is through educating our teens and our youth and really defining what's a healthy relationship look like, right?
Mhm.
Because if you grow up in a home where there's discourse and fighting and violent behavior, that's my norm. And so I'm going to gravitate to that, whether I be a young girl or a young boy. That's what relationships look like to me. And so really spending time, no matter what you do, interacting with youth to question and hear out what they think, what they consider to be a good, relationship, and why they think that's a good relationship, and if it isn't, start talking about it.
right. I've done some work with Howard University on speaking to different HBCU leaders, management, teachers, administrators, and students actually about on-campus violence, and the issue of the bystander has really become quite prominent in those discussions now, and how other people who are not immediately the victim can help in some way to diffuse the situation, or get help, or in
Right.
some way
Mhm.
be an assistant to that person who's being victimized.
It's interesting because you just mentioned one subset of the multifaceted, multi-complex landscape around what types of prevention, what types of crimes, and therefore what types of programs actually work. That was intimate partner. So your friend, your boo, to all the way
Right.
to your husband, and then, at any point in time in your growth and development from high school all the way up, or even middle school on up,
Exactly.
that violence continues. But there's so if it's so complex, there's multiple other types of crimes in which prevention could certainly work. Definitely schools come to mind, youth come to mind, particularly those who are at risk adolescents who are already
Mhm.
in abusive, violent homes,
Mhm.
and therefore carry that behavior into their intimate partners or their friendships in their schools. We see a lot of that in the news with kids who are showing up with firearms, and then letting that be a part of their response mechanism, their coping mechanism, perhaps in resolving issues and problems.
All right.
What are some of the ways communities should be responding? I have a list that the Justice Department and the National Institute for Justice put together of what kinds of programs work and what kind of programs don't work. And I was really surprised to see some of those programs. I can share that with you and we can have a little
And
chat.
if I could just
Mhm.
piggyback on that, because we had a meeting the other day here on violence, and I think it's not even just only the family and their immediate surroundings, but the community. If the
Yes.
how do you get to the entire community to
Mhm.
understand that they are really teaching violence by the way they react to different things?
Right, right. And well, certainly counseling, support services, support groups, spending time educating, the faith-based community, because
Yeah.
that's always been our refuge, right?
Mhm,
And
mhm.
so having them be able to step up to have the conversation in their ministries from the pulpit is very helpful, right?
Mhm.
There's so many, youth programs. I mean, my daughters were Girl Scouts, and having that conversation, even there, Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts, right? Being able to have a conversation, even in the schools, during assemblies, to really talk about what's that look like to them, and not necessarily to say, oh that's definitely not healthy, but really to find out why they think it's healthy. Why is it okay if their boyfriend or their boo's blowing up their phone 24/7? Because that is a form of intimate partner violence, and maybe cute at the time, but it's important for them to know that that's a violation of your personal, of your ability to make your own personal decisions. And so something that minor can always be communicated.
That's interesting. That brings to mind the question maybe that we're just a little ignorant to understand what actually constitutes violence.
Mhm.
And or I guess maybe the entry to that would be harassment, or maybe they're used synonymously.
Mhm.
So that
Stalking,
stalking,
Stalking. Mhm. Mhm.
and
so
then that phone call business is kind of a stalking activity as well.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
yes, because you have stalking through phone, text, on the social media. I know that there are
Right.
many. So that leads to the question for me is how to put barriers. What is, for instance, if we're talking, let's just use the example of stalking online on media, because we've seen cases where the victim has responded to all of that negative bullying, cyberbullying,
Mhm.
and then
Mhm.
unfortunately may commit suicide because it's just too overwhelming to them
Mhm.
to
Right.
process.
Mhm.
How do we execute and implement, or how would an organization like your organization, where we could partner with or get involved in around these kind of anti-bullying behaviors, programs?
Well, I mean, there's all kinds of campaigns that we can do. We do a lot of like bus stop ads, posting things on social media, because that's where a lot of the youth get their information from.
Mhm.
Um, you know, and really getting the word out. But we also believe educating the
Yeah.
youth will be helpful to put them in the position of educating other youth. Because think about it, when we grew up, we thought our girlfriend knew everything.
Yeah.
And so those were the people that we listened to. And so I believe using that kind of model can really have an impact.
Mm.
You talk about you mentioned a couple of times having the conversation, and I'm going back to some of the panels that were discussing these kinds of issues.
Mm-hmm.
The being open, non-judgmental, and allowing the child to really express themselves and really listen. Sometimes we talk at people, or we brush it off,
Mm-hmm.
or sometimes they say something that we think is a little rude or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But just listening,
Mm-hmm.
listening, giving the young person a chance to really express themselves um,
Mm-hmm.
seems to be a really important component, and I'm sure that's what you do.
Yeah, it's really important. I was at a mother-daughter tea last week, and it was all about teen dating violence.
Mhm.
And they talked about, and the youth talked about having that safe space where it's non-judgmental, where you really feel, say anything, and this isn't the time for me to punish you, judge you, or anything. I just want to know. And they really thought that that was important. Some of the youth had experienced something like that, and other youth were like, what? So, but being open and really believing that, in this particular space, be it the kitchen table or whatever, you can say whatever you want.
That brings to mind when we talk about those kind of campaigns, why aren't we seeing more at the national level? We hear about it once the crime has been committed. We hear about the schools who have been infiltrated by shooters and active shooters and the devastating result there. But I'm not seeing as much on the national level that would then trickle down or cascade into my local community as a program or a campaign or an awareness education to better understand, to help me as a parent or help me as part of the community implement these strategies.
Mm-hmm.
Is there something that we're not doing, that we're not advocating at the local level enough, that it ascends versus whatever little is out there cascade? How do we use our voice differently?
Well, I guess two comments I'll make. Okay, I think we recognize it is a national problem, but the solutions have to be locally, because think about it, every neighborhood, every household, every county is different. And so from that perspective, it's about motivating and getting your neighborhood, your household, your development into action. And from a national level, I mean, we belong to like a national cohort, and where across the nation, different people are implementing, programs, trainings, in the schools, in the churches, to really try to have an impact. But I agree, you don't hear about it from a national level, unfortunately, until something happens. And what we're looking at is, let's prevent it. And that's where the message is weak, I believe.
What about preventing? Do you get involved in trying to prevent retaliation? Because so many things happen, somebody gets hurt or
Mm-hmm.
killed,
Mm-hmm.
and the people around them want to retaliate.
Right.
And you end up with another injury or killing.
Mm-hmm.
How much of that are you dealing with?
And that's really an unfortunate situation, because in our cases, since we do all crime types, we do know that people are hesitant to get involved to try to hold someone accountable because of retaliation. And even down to our children, when you think about gang violence and gang influence, even if they do see something, is it safe for them to intervene or to say something? And that's real. And people really
Very
have
real,
to think
very
about
real.
it before you do it. So no, that is a major problem. I mean, not only in our area, but nationally,
Wow.
universally, really.
I would think so, just simply because we have you have the ability to create a viral moment for someone who should be able to step forward and
Mm-hmm.
speak up and not feel that retaliation or be subjected to retaliation or even in fear of. But
Mm-hmm.
social media has almost obliterated those opportunities, and it's very challenging when you can be viewed and not have to go to any length to protect yourself. You're just going to be put out there.
Right.
um, we've talked a lot about youth, and one of the things, some of the programs, in your experience, in your 20 years, that these are some of that the Justice Department itself says
Mm-hmm.
that do not work. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are. This is, and I don't know if that's true, and maybe it is community specific, but for instance, like the gun buyback programs, coming out of the nonprofit community. I've worked with churches. We've certainly given from foundations I've been responsible for leading into these. We've donated into these gun buyback programs. So
Mm-hmm.
to corporately to support getting $25 or $50 program. What do you think about that one program as a start?
I think that any gun you can get off the street is a benefit. Whether somebody has 5 guns and they say, I'm willing to give up this one, it can certainly have an impact.
I think that's true. It always is shocking to me how many guns are collected in these buyback programs to understand how many guns are literally, and these are undocumented, unlicensed guns
Yeah.
that are out there on the street. It's just, it's staggering and shocking.
Well, they say more
Big
guns than
guns.
people, right?
Yeah.
Say that one more time.
They say there's more guns than people.
There are more guns than people. That is awful.
That's awful.
So here's another program, and I just don't understand how the Justice Department, maybe their assessment is such that, but that counseling and peer counseling of students in schools may not necessarily work. I bet you there's a real pushback on that one.
Well, I certainly believe in mental health services. I think the challenge and what's changing today was initially counselors who were put in schools for education, for planning for college, were then kind of like, oh, you're a counselor. Can you see Arlene because she's going through something? And that's not the same thing as mental health. And so now I think schools are, now they're hiring mental health therapists who can really address the fact, that I've just gone through a traumatic experience and be able to see me on that level. So I think as long as schools begin to change that, I think mental health can work.
Yeah. We need a lot more people in that field.
Yeah.
True. Because that's a discussion that we've had here about having, mental health counselors, licensed social workers and so forth who specialize in that area in the schools. We just don't have enough to go around. But our health department does try, especially if there's some major thing, again, something happens in the school, they go in and try to work with the students and listen to them and counsel them and so forth. But it's not enough. We really need many more people to go into these fields.
We really do. When I think about, I'm just going to use my daughter's school. I won't name the name, but I would say that they have about 2,900 students. And they do have a mental health, behavioral health provider that is an everyday presence in the school. However, their staff is about 2 to 3 individuals on a day. And I marvel at that thinking, what happens if they have a big outbreak or something happens? Those 3 clinicians would be completely inundated and unable to really, it's like picking up a pebble on a beach. There's no way to be fully comprehensive in your response to that. So I don't know if that means that we have to provide mental health and behavioral health training to our teachers, because we're just in that day and age where they need to be able to recognize some of the markers of a breakdown or episode, bipolar episode that hasn't been treated, or not just that you're bad or you're disruptive, but there's something behind those emotions. There's something behind those actions that need to be determined. Maybe it's untreated ADHD, or other
sometimes,
diagnoses that have yet to really been fully fleshed out. Is that a response? Are we heading in that direction? I'm not even clear if the teachers in my school have been, even my daughter's school, brought into those types of conversations, and whether there's pushback, because teachers are now just about everything inside the school, because they're dealing with everything inside the classroom, I should say.
And they're community-wide, I think, like mental health first aid programs that train. Even something as basic as that would be really helpful. I'm not sure how many schools.
Well, we just talk right ourselves into the commercial. So we're going to take a commercial break and come back with that subject and more with Arlene Joelle from CAFE and Dr. Donna Christensen. We'll be right back on RTV.network.
In Deli and Plaza East Online, we are your local hometown supermarket for all your grocery shopping needs. You now have the convenience of grocery shopping online, saving you time and money. freeing up your time spent in a grocery store, giving you more time for yourself as well as your family. Just simply fill out the online form or give us a call and we will process your order for pickup or delivery. Thank you for shopping at Seaside Market in Delhi and Plaza East Online.
You're too damn important to be drinking trash. This is V Plus Energy, one of the healthiest energy drinks in the world. 5 fruits, 5 vegetables, 5 vitamins. The other brands just won't tell you what they put in their drink, and that's scary. V Plus is natural recurring energy with great taste.
ICABA, ICABA, stands for the International Career and Business Alliance. And basically, it's really about building, activating relationships that grow wealth.
What is ACABA doing? ACABA is putting you in an environment where you can rub shoulders, you can actually talk to wealth creators, to entrepreneurs who may look like you, who may come from circumstances like you, who may come from an environment like your environment. And then once you go ahead and grab that baton, you might say, well, this is possible. This individual over here did it, and now I can do it. So ICABA is raising our level of vision, and they're doing a fantastic.
Follow the Brand TV broadcast host, Grant McGaw, as he visits with top executives and entrepreneurs to find out their secrets of success with their personal brand. Follow the Brand TV broadcast host as he focuses on brand development to build better relationships, bring value to your business, relationships, and career. You will enjoy listening to each episode that is tailored to speak to you directly. If you're looking for this type of clarity in terms of building your brand, you have tuned into the right station. Each episode will help you to shape a conversation in the 5-star BDM network of 20,000 professionals and become a springboard for your corporate engagement and business opportunities. Each guest will frame their story in the areas of personal branding, business development, career development, financial empowerment, and technology innovation. Grant McGaw explains why he is the CEO and owner of his own professional career. Grant is an accomplished business leader and entrepreneur who wants to give back to individuals to grow their personal brand strategy. Tune in as he weaves his story about new possibilities, while to you exceed expectations. If you love storytelling, this show will make for fun.
Well, welcome back to Health, Wellness, and Lifestyles with Linda Dorman and Dr. Donna Christensen. right here on our TV network. And we're just having this amazing conversation. It's going by fast with Arlene Joel, who is the founder and CEO of Community Advocates for Family and Youth, affectionately known as CAFE. So we were talking about different programs that do and do not work. And before I forget, I wanted to ask you, because our listeners are all across the country, the Caribbean, and other parts of the world. Tell us a little bit about the organization that you mentioned that you're affiliated with, where perhaps in their own community they can tag team, do a little bit of research. And if you recall that URL or that website, that would be wonderful.
So the national cohort that we're a part of is under Health and Human Services, and it's Safe Futures. And across the nation, you'll be able to find information about agencies that are available to help and support you.
Outstanding.
Safe Futures. Okay.
That's important information, because we're very blessed to have you here in Prince George's County in Maryland as a model of excellence in supporting and advocating and providing collaboration with our local municipalities, our police department here as it relates to victims' rights. And we really want, if you are a victim of any type of crime or any type of issue, clearly we want you to connect with your local resources to support and help you. You're not alone, but rather there are resources to be in a position to support you.
Yeah. The NMA is really also trying to, prepare our membership to be more effective and more aggressive in dealing with these kinds of issues. So there's help there. Our gun violence prevention council is led by someone who's big in 100 Black men. And they seem to have a very active program, because I've heard from several of their organizations from different states that are really trying to assist in this area.
Yeah. And can you share with us, because across the country, we should all be learning to do this as part of our community, our individual community give back. And if you're affiliated with an organization, American Medical Association, as Dr. Christensen just mentioned, Girl Scouts, the national.
I'm sure the American is too, but remember national.
The National Association of Medical Association, Girl Scouts, Coalition of 100 Black Women, 100 Black Men, sororities, fraternities.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about your victims advocacy training. What does that entail? As we're looking out into the community to become volunteers, how do we go about that?
Okay, so our victim advocacy training, it is about a 40-hour training, because people really do need to understand how to work and approach survivors of crime. And also to really know whether you can do this kind of work. People often do want to help, but they may not necessarily, have the heart to be able to work with trauma day in and day out. And anyone that's in a domestic violence, intimate partner relationship, it is a traumatic experience. So we do have training for that. We also have a 24-hour helpline training. And what I have found is that most agencies across the nation have some type of 24-hour access for people to get services. And so I think it's important for, for someone who may be looking to leave a situation, to always look for that 800 number, because your time to leave may happen at 3 a.m. and you would still need services. But from our perspective, getting the community involved to do advocacy, helpline services, because people are committed to their communities and they want them to be better. And so we're always encouraging people to volunteer. And not only with us, with any nonprofit agency or agency that supports, men and women of domestic violence or intimate partner.
And I so appreciate you saying that the National Center for Victims of Crime.
Mm-hmm.
I just want everyone to know, and hopefully have a pen close. It's 800-800-394-2255. That's
Mm-hmm.
800-394-2255, or the URL or website victimsofcrime.org.
Mm-hmm.
O-R-G. And
Mm-hmm.
so you're right. I think we all should receive some training, and maybe it should be mandated alongside, for instance, like getting our driver's license or renewing, where we have just some basic training around things like recognizing human trafficking,
Right.
recognizing violence in your home, how to access these resources very quickly. Kind of some, not a heavy lift and study, but it just a
Mm-hmm.
good transfer of some baseline information, but put it in a context where we all move forward, just like we did with COVID. We all
Right.
learn
Mm-hmm.
things as it relates to COVID, and we did. And here is yet another important subject that we should all know and become volunteers. Because if you have to become, if you have a violence in your family, then it's important to understand how you as a family member need to respond,
Mm-hmm.
get the proper training so that it will be a real true support for you and your family, and particularly the victim within the family, because everyone's affected.
That's a
What,
really good
what's
idea.
yeah? What's the makeup of your clientele? How much? How many are children? How many are involved in domestic violence? What is, what's the makeup of your?
So, Prince George's County is a predominantly African American community, and so African Americans and Hispanic population are the majority of people that experience intimate partner and domestic violence. I think since COVID, we've even seen an increase in our senior population.
Mm.
And so from that perspective, but that 13 to 24 years of age, that is true to form, and that it's usually about 6 to 12% of the people that have experienced some type of intimate partner relationship. And then you go, between 34 and 54.
Now, you just said something that was really surprising, disheartening, and shocking, and that somewhere out of COVID, the increase in violence against our elderlies
Mm-hmm.
We've
has
seen that.
exploded.
Have you seen that? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You've seen that. Can you elaborate on what? And Dr. Christensen, you would know perhaps as well. Why? How? What's the crosswalk on that?
I'll let Arlene go ahead first.
Well, from our perspective, it's a couple of things. One is COVID. People were isolated, people were confined. You didn't really have, an escape. And so that may have prompted it. The other thing is, a lot of seniors have brought back their adult children. And so that creates, possibility of a vulnerable situation. So I think we've seen those two things really be a factor. More seniors have to be taken care of, by their spouse. If I'm not mobile, but my spouse is, and so there's a lot of challenges that we've seen rise to the top, and that may have been there all the time, but now they're surfacing.
Right. I think the fact that you're in close proximity with people, with the rest of your family, that probably at another time they may be out at a senior center during the day, or someone else may be coming in to assist, but now you're there, and
Right.
normal anxiety probably also of COVID and maybe not being able to work, the frustrations that you're feeling, all of that.
Right.
I think that's important. And at the federal level, we all, if you follow all of these types of things, the current president did reauthorize the Violence Against Women's Act. And I think that was important to be able to have federal dollars start to cascade into states.
Yes.
Congress really does that, and he signs it.
Well, yes.
Right.
But it was amazing to me that years we had to fight, demonstrate,
Hmm.
hold rallies,
For years.
and corner the senators. Normally, the House would pass it, but
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
Senate usually was where the problems were. Yeah,
Right.
but I'm glad that it's been reauthorized.
Well,
But
that's critical because then that lets money come down that will help fund law enforcement and those
Hmm.
programs, CAFI and those programs,
Right.
and do the
yeah,
kind of work
and
that's necessary.
nationally too, I think they've done a bit of expanding on what constitutes interpersonal um, violence, and at the universities, they have to give their safety profile and report on any violent acts that take
Hmm.
place on the campus, and it's tied to funding and other things. So
Well, that's good.
there's been some things that have happened on a national level.
Hmm.
Well,
Hmm.
that's interesting. So they do the reporting of violence on campus in order to,
Yes,
um,
and it's public. It's made public so
Hmm.
that parents know what kind of environment their young people are going to be going into, or not go. Make sure that they don't go into a place that
Hmm.
where they may be subjected to more so to violence in another university, and especially for people who are leaving home for the first time,
Right.
they're the prey.
Hmm. Hmm.
they're very vulnerable. So
Yeah,
that,
but you also have to think too. I mean, that's great that they're doing it, but I guess one concern is think about it. I mean, domestic violence, sexual assault, I mean, they're underreported. And so, how many
Absolutely.
naive children go to college and then they experience this, you know, this incident, and then they're like, oh gosh, I can't tell anybody, so
That happens.
I
That
know
a lot of
that's
the
true.
case studies that we look at, that's exactly what happens.
Mhm.
And if you're in the
mhm.
LGBTQ
Oh, right.
plus
Plus community.
community, it's
Mhm.
even worse.
It's even worse, right? It's even worse, and what we've seen is even more violent, which is unfortunate.
Hmm.
Which is really
So then
unfortunate.
that speaks to mind the real issue perhaps is stemming from unchecked, unmitigated, and just a complex set of mental health issues that the individuals in society are dealing with and have no other recourse but to demonstrate that in a violent way. It's almost like we have so many people walking with post-traumatic stress syndrome, um, from all walks of life, and from all places. How do we even begin to deal with the complexities of this? As you said, it's getting worse. How do we deal with the complexities of this?
Well, I think the more of us that understand it, right, and can talk about it openly,
Mhm.
the more of us that can look at ways to prevent it through education and training, um, and the more support services that are out there. Because if I don't have anywhere to go,
Yeah.
then I'm not going to report it, and I know this devil, so there's no sense in me stepping out, to some unknown. So I think those are probably three steps. And really understanding that it's a journey for, I don't care how old you are, to leave a violent situation. Um, because it's personal, right? It's
Mhm.
usually someone that you love, someone that you trust, someone that you married, someone that you had children with, and someone that's probably taken care of you. And so, first of all, it's coming to grips with that violation of trust. So
Yes.
it's a journey, and the more people understand that it's okay to take the journey,
Yeah.
just keep planning for that journey. No matter how many times you plan for it, just keep planning for it.
Yeah, I think that that's critical, and I appreciate that, and we're not suggesting that anyone should stay in a violent
Right.
situation because you are comfortable, or because you might even believe that it's tomorrow is going to be better than today.
Mhm.
Be aware. What are some of the things that we would say to our those who have the potential, who have been engaged in maybe that, I'm going to say, entry level, that first, assault, that first victimization of a domestic partner. How do we help them to extract themselves and to see realities in it?
Well, I think if you recognize that someone's violated you in any way, if you're able to make that decision the first time it happens to get away from it, I think that's fantastic. Do it. And I think if you're not, statistics have shown that it's hard to do, financially, emotionally, physically. There may be a lot of dynamics that keep you in
And if you
that.
have children in the house,
They have children, they don't work, they don't have access to money, they don't have access to transportation. Maybe I was raised, religious impacts, you never get a divorce.
That's a factor as well.
That's a factor as well. And so I think recognizing kind of, where people are and supporting them, if this is the first time or the fifth time, still supporting that person to be healthy, and not necessarily like, okay, you should get out of that situation, but you want that person to be healthy.
Yeah.
And all of these things do impact your physical health, not just your mental health. And it's been shown that, for example, in younger people, in children, these adverse experiences
Right.
result sometimes in heart disease, diabetes, of course, depression.
Yeah.
But many of the chronic diseases are influenced or influence at least, but also are generated because of the stresses that that child has gone through that have not had a chance to be resolved.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely
Yeah, because they're living in a constant state of flight or fright. The chemicals in our body are not designed in those scenarios to be persistent. There is to be episodic in response. And so if you're living in a consistently stressed out state,
Absolutely.
every single day, you're not able to get the level of real true rest that's refreshing, that's restoring, that's required. And you wake up and you do that whole thing all over again. You're building those cortisols. You're building up, that stickiness in your blood system. You're building yourself up for a stroke or a heart attack, or shutting down your primary organs for sure. On top of not being able to have the right digestive health, not being able to have the mental clarity to make good decisions, particularly in young children, as their minds are literally growing and beginning to fuse more succinctly before they become full-fledged adults. So it's very complex. And so I applaud Kathy for adding into your service mix the counseling services. Do you offer that service as an example to not just the victims, but the victim, their village? And how does that work?
To their to whoever their village is, because Dr. Christensen mentioned adverse childhood experiences, and that's something that we definitely talk to about our youth, as well as their parents, because as parents, we were taught to kind of keep it moving.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
And
grin and bear it and keep on going.
Exactly. And so parents are sometimes surprised that, oh my gosh, like, John went through this, and the impact, like the health impact, the psychological impact that it can have on our youth. So,
Arlene, I know that our 1 hour could never cover the depth of what you do and in your level of knowledge and connection that you've gained over the 20 years in dealing with victims in all types of scenarios, and at all spectrum of the age range. Is there something that you would want to impart in terms of wisdom or thought process or words of encouragement to those who know they're victims of violence, or who are in the process of trying to process that assault of any kind, the depth of that violence that they've experienced? Can you provide some of that for us?
Well, I would just encourage people to, you know, understand how they can be safe. Everyone doesn't leave a situation, but building up the ability to be safe in a volatile situation for you and your children is very important. I think if you have the ability to do that, do that. If you if you're planning to leave, plan to leave, and that's okay too, but I think it does take help. It does take support, whether it's through, a community service, your doctor, your hospital. All of those people are trained to help you in a volatile situation. And so utilize them, where there's places that may not have legal consequences or cultural norms may be different and violence is acceptable. There's always ways to maybe, reach out to someone to get support and help.
Wonderful. Well, I mean, you're now heading into your 20th year. Congratulations. How exciting can that be? When you started CAFE, did you foresee the day where you would arrive 20 years into the future? And, what has changed?
And how has your staff grown and
how
your
has your
services grown over the years?
Yeah.
Yes.
I had no idea it would be this. But because when I sometimes share my story, I say, we were a volunteer organization for years, probably at least, 7 of these 20 years, it was strictly volunteer. And, but I think the one thing that we continue to focus on is we look for people whose gift is servanthood, because I think if you have that gift, then you're able to do this type of heart work.
I think that it is a gift. And I think that each one of us has it within us to connect. And I think society right now, this makes more sense than other things make sense, that we should get the training to become victim advocates, because at some point you're going to connect, whether it's a church, school, a friend or a neighbor or someone in your own family.
Right.
The statistics indicate, and sadly, that they're going to be a victim of some kind of violence. And so we might as well get to understand how to be responsive to that family member, that neighbor, that friend.
I agree.
But how do you deal with stress that this may cause around your staff? They're dealing sometimes in some very difficult situations.
Well, I am big on self-care. And so for as much as we can, we practice a 4-day work week, and that, so that staff does get the opportunity to use that Friday as, the world is okay. The other thing, we encourage people to go to counseling, but more importantly, to understand how you practice self-care. If you do yoga, if you color, if you knit, whatever that is to take you away from your work is so important. I know when COVID hit, we didn't realize that journey from the office to home was like really important to help you leave that at the office. But yeah, self-care days, we have sometimes self-care weeks, because sometimes things can, get overwhelming. But
we're almost down to 30 seconds.
And when we get down to those couple of minutes, I want to make sure that we say 2 things, the seconds. In order to get to know this organization, to find another organization in your community, please visit www.cafyonline.org. So cafyonline.org. And then if you know anyone or you feel that you are a victim of violence, please, please, please call 1-800-394-2255. Very important. Thank you so much, Arlene. We appreciate you. Great seeing you, Donna.
Nice seeing you too. It's been a while, but yeah.
We look forward to coming
back in
back
2
in 2
weeks.
weeks. And another important topic on breast cancer, possibly.
Okay.
Have a good afternoon.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.